These are the worst mistakes to have ever been made on Hell's Kitchen. And this contestant's absurd cooking hack confused the hell out of Chef Ramsay.
Cold water was supposed to boil faster than hot water.
What?
Season 1 was a welcome treat for Chef Ramsay fans. I mean, who doesn't want to see this man vent his frustrations out on some ignorant chefs? But nothing could have prepared us for what he was about to hear next. On the third day during the dinner service, both the teams were facing the heat of having to serve two internationally acclaimed food critics. As both teams got their first ticket, in the red kitchen, Jeff Lepoff brought 2 plates of lobster spaghetti. While one had too much lobster, the other had none. But thanks to Michael Ray's help, the refire was accepted. Despite that, an argument broke out between Lepoff and sous chef Marianne when Lepoff started to complain about never working on the line before. Okay, so I don't see how that's the sous chef's fault. But Chef Ramsay tried to immediately step in and calm the situation down. However, Lepoff tried to argue with Chef Ramsay, and he had no idea what was coming.
I've never been on a line before.
Right,
I'm
okay.
doing the best I can.
Stop shouting.
Anyway, in the midst of calming down and moving on to the next order, Wendy Liu from New Jersey shocked Chef Ramsay by literally bending the laws of physics. Hoping to see the blue team in a better position, Chef Ramsay walked up to Liu to check up on her spaghetti timing. But Liu hadn't gotten her water to a boil yet. When Chef Ramsay asked her about it, she simply admitted that the water was indeed not boiling. Ramsay was a little confused, but he had to clear things up. So he asked her if she had topped it with cold water, and much to his surprise, or rather his shock, Liu gave him the worst reason ever. She said this:
I thought cold water was supposed to boil faster than hot water.
After listening to the absurdity of this statement, Chef Ramsay couldn't even snap back at her. All he could do was this.
What?
The disbelief in Chef Ramsay's voice was palpable. Once this episode aired, Liu became quite the star for this meme-worthy moment. Fans pitched in with all kinds of comments. Referring to Chef Ramsay, one said, "Homie isn't even mad, just concerned for this person's intelligence and well-being." While another said, she better get an award for completely confusing the shit out of Chef Ramsay. But guess what? There were also those who supported her claims. One said, "To be fair, this is kind of a myth that goes around. I remember hearing this years ago. So whose team are you on? Let us know in the comment section down below." But that's not the only thing Liu did that day. Sometime later, Liu moved to the meat station but couldn't get a grip on her timing. Her struggle turned out to be a major setback for the blue team. In the end, the red team was able to send out 15 entrees while the blue team lagged behind with just 8. If that wasn't enough, Liu struggled quite a bit with the lamb sauce as well. But it was her excuses that annoyed Chef Ramsay even more. Chef Ramsay was fed up with Liu's pathetic replies, so he warned her by saying this:
You've now pushed me to the limit. I suggest you shut your mouth. Last chance.
However, tired of waiting, the customers had to leave the dining room hungry. After all these blunders, it doesn't surprise me that Liu was eliminated from the competition that same night. But this next contestant cooked the entire batch of filet mignon. Chef Ramsay chastised her with his sharp tongue, but did she learn her lesson? In the 5th episode of Season 8, both teams were getting ready for the prom night dinner service. As both teams began their orders, Emily Kuchin sent out crab cakes that were soggy. What's more, Boris Polshuk ended up cooking 10 crab cakes when only 2 were ordered. Both teams were driving Chef Ramsay up the wall with their mistakes. But what Melissa Donnie did next made Chef Ramsay lose his cool. After only a half an hour into the dinner service, the red team only served 3 tables of appetizers. Despite this, Donnie decided to get started on the filet mignon. Chef Ramsay was so pissed that he asked her if she wanted to go home. But just you wait till you see how many fillets were ready to be served. To everyone's horror, this is what Chef Ramsay found.
17, 18, 19, 20, 21.
There's 23 on board, Chef.
So what? Why are you cooking them now?
That was the entire batch of orders for the night. Chef Ramsay couldn't believe how Donnie could be so stupid to prepare the entire batch. They weren't only prepared well ahead of time, but Donnie had also overcooked them. What a massive waste! On top of this, Polshuk from the blue team sent out crab cakes that were cold. While the blue team had a slow start because of this, they still managed to send out food. Later on, Chef Ramsay found some disgusting purple goop on the red team's plate, and Kuchin sent out raw halibut. This service was testing the limit of Chef Ramsay's patience. One mistake followed another, but Chef Ramsay lost it when Donnie walked up with beef that was rare. Chef Ramsay still wasn't over her filet mignon blunder, so he instantly started lecturing her. Just as he was explaining what needed to be done, Nona Sivley rudely interrupted the famous chef. Chef Ramsay immediately called her out and asked her to take over his place in the kitchen. And how he did it is well worth watching.
I'm gonna put them back in the oven. Explain to your team. There you go.
Considering Donnie's huge blunder that day, it surprised all of us when the one who was eliminated was Kutchins. Donnie wasted so much food, for crying out loud. The next day, the blue team was in for a treat. Chef Ramsay transferred Donnie to the blue team. While the red team was ecstatic, the same couldn't be said about the blue team. But Chef Ramsay gave Donnie one last chance. The only thing she had to do was prove that she was worthy of being in the kitchen. But she failed. During the next dinner service, Donnie was at the fish station. When she first sent scallops to the pass, they came out raw. Then on the refire, she charred the hell out of them. On the third attempt, it was rejected yet again for being overcooked. Donnie then revealed that there were no scallops left to work with. Guess how much she wasted? Rob McHugh has the answer to that one.
Melissa must have cooked about 10 pounds of scallops, all cooked up for the garbage.
Chef Ramsay was furious. Thinking on his feet, he simply asked the blue team to replace the scallop salad with rock shrimp salad and continue with the service. In the end, both teams failed miserably and were named joint losers. There are deliberations that result in very shocking eliminations, but in this episode, almost everyone knew who was gonna leave. To no one's surprise, Donnie was booted out before she could even waste more food. But this next contestant screwed up Hell's Kitchen's first ever dog show. While all the contestants were really excited to make finger-licking food, this contestant got confused about who he was cooking for. I already have a bad feeling about this one. In season 13, Chef Ramsay hosted the first ever Hell's Kitchen dog show. Wow, now isn't that gonna be exciting? The culinary genius had to come up with some interesting challenges, one of which was the dog show tasting challenge. For this challenge, both teams would have to make 2 appetizers and 3 entrees for the menu. And the team with the most chosen items would win the challenge. The teams had 45 minutes to cook their dishes, and because the blue team had 1 extra member, one of them would have to sit things out. While almost everyone understood the task at hand, Say Dancy believed that the dish they were cooking was actually for the dogs. So she decided to make braised beef for them. It wasn't until everyone had finished making their dishes that Dancy realized her huge mistake. But it was already way too late. All she could say was this.
I look around and I realize, oh my God, these are human portions. I thought we were cooking for dogs.
It doesn't surprise me that she was the only one who cooked food for the dogs. And let's not forget that she took great care that it was dog friendly. When Chef Ramsay saw the dish, you have to hear what he said.
Or does that sound ridiculous? Looks like a dog shat all over my plate.
The blue team had to drop Dancy's dish. There was no way they could serve dog food to the customers. While the dish crushed Chef Ramsay's hopes for the first ever dog show, there was one contestant who brought back the spirit of the competition. This is what Hell's Kitchen is all about. There are failures, and then there are successful stories that follow. During the entree round, most of the dishes turned out to be average, but there was one that stood out from the others by a great margin. When Jennifer Salhoff presented her dish, Chef Ramsay had no idea that he was in for a surprise. Her pan-seared Chilean sea bass with spicy heirloom tomato broth was so good that it was not only praised for being the best dish of the day, but also named as the most beautiful dish in the competition so far. Thanks to this dish, Salhoff managed to save the day, but this next service was so full of mistakes that Chef Ramsay found it impossible to carry on without losing his mind. So what exactly did he do? He shut the kitchen down. In the 3rd episode of season 5, before the dinner service even started, Chef Ramsay revealed that it was going to be a steakhouse special. He also revealed that they would be doing double seating. This meant that one team would cook while the other would be serving, and then they would have to switch it up for the next seating. It was decided that for the first seating, the blue team would cook and the red team would serve. However, the red team was moving at a sluggish pace with writing tickets, and Lacey D'Angelo was the worst. Chef Ramsay and Jean-Philippe were beginning to get annoyed, since only if the kitchen received its tickets could they start cooking their orders. 20 minutes in, and the blue team finally received their first ticket. While they were working on their first order, Charlie McKay had forgotten to get the shrimp for the Caesar salad on the grill. But then suddenly, Chef Ramsay spotted something. He was so alarmed that he shouted back by saying,
Your cloth's on fire! Your cloth's on fire!
What was he doing? How could he miss something this disastrous? 30 minutes into the service, Ben Wolanka sent his desserts to the pass. Chef Ramsay was furious because it pretty much looked like all the contestants were daydreaming at their stations.
What are you dreaming of? Are you stupid?
No, chef. You got cheesecake made as well.
How could he be so lost? How could you send out desserts before the appetizers were even ready? In the meantime, Giovanni Filippone's steaks were coming back to the kitchen for being raw. With only 30 minutes left for the blue team's service, Jean-Philippe realized that D'Angelo hadn't even sent out one of the tickets to the kitchen. This one was a total loser. You just won't believe what she told Jean-Philippe when he asked her about it. She said,
I have to go up there and tell him to fire it?
Well, who else gonna do it?
Jean-Philippe, I've never waited tables before.
gosh. Can you believe that? She was expecting the tickets to walk themselves to the kitchen? When Chef Ramsay found out about D'Angelo's mistake, he was furious. But she didn't care. Chef Ramsay asked the team to get on it, but Filippone revealed that there was only one filet left. So Seth Levine was asked to prep another one. But Levine had no idea what to do. While he was asking McKee for directions, Chef Ramsay happened to see it. He called this situation pathetic, but it was only worsened when Chef Ramsay saw Levine put something in the fridge. Ugh, what was he up to now? Chef Ramsay found an entire chunk of the best portion of meat butchered for a small piece of filet. The famous chef was so pissed that the entire chunk of meat was wasted that this is what he did next.
We wasted the most expensive part. Look at it. What are you gonna do? Get Daddy to buy you a new one?
But would things turn around for the better in the second seating? This time it was the red team's turn to cook and the blue team's turn to serve. As the red team got started with their first ticket, Colleen Creek forgot 2 orders of Caesar salad and Chef Ramsay accused her of doing it on purpose. But Creek couldn't keep her mouth shut. She talked back to Chef Ramsay and you already know what happened next.
Look at me. Full salad. Hey, madam, you're pathetic.
Yes, chef?
This was indeed a really hellish service. I mean, almost every other contestant was goofing around. With only 5 minutes left before the service concluded, Heinle was still pushing out entrees to the dining room. But Carol Scott mistook an order of New York strip loin for ribeye. There you go. The team was back to being a bunch of bozos. Before they could even correct the mistake, Chef Ramsay ended the service. While this service was doomed to be a failure right from the very beginning, this next service was so full of mistakes that Chef Ramsay kicked not 1, not 2, but 5 contestants out of the kitchen. Oh, I promise you, this is gonna be a crazy one. In the 4th episode of the 10th season, during the dinner service, the red team hoped to bounce back from their loss, and the blue team was looking forward to another winning night. When Chef Ramsay called out the red team's first order, Danielle Rimmer was so confused that she asked her teammates about it, much to their annoyance. After clarifying the order, when she sent her risotto to the pass, it was slammed for being raw and under-seasoned. Chef Ramsay couldn't help but berate her for being such a mess. Rimmer continued to maintain the same stride for the rest of the service. Her lack of communication slowed the entire team down. She even decided to deliver her dish to the pass without communicating with Robin Almodovar first. 1 hour and 15 minutes into the dinner service, both teams moved on to the entrees. Merrill wanted to redeem himself when he got the chance to work at the fish station, but when he sent his cod to the pass, it was still raw. This was only the beginning of Chef Ramsay's long and disastrous night.
Cat food. Off, will you?
But instead of bouncing back to a good pace, Merrill ended up burning the refire. To make matters even worse, since it was the last portion of cod left, they had to knock it off the menu and replace it with sea bass. Chef Ramsay was already angry with the mistakes, but what Merrill did next was the last straw. When Chef Ramsay called out the revised order, everyone replied to him with a loud "Yes, chef." But Merrill had something entirely different to say. He said this.
Coming right now, baby.
It's coming, baby. You cook like a baby.
What happened again, chef? Get out!
This was followed by Roshni Gurani's frustrating performance when she sent out Wellingtons that were stone cold and raw. She was the next contestant to follow Merrill out of the kitchen. But wait, we're not done yet. Though, it's a shame that you got this far into the video and still haven't dropped a massive like down below. And if you haven't already, why not subscribe to my channel for more amazing content like this? It's free, so why not just do it? Now, back to the video. Meanwhile, in the blue kitchen, when Don Savage sliced up the steak, Royce Wagner told him that it was raw, but Savage ignored him and went on with it. Seeing the raw steak, Chef Ramsay was frustrated. But when he kept calling out wrong timings for the refire, Chef Ramsay sent him walking right out the door. The red team finally sent out their first entree order, only to find out that the spinach was too garlicky and the sauce for the Wellington was really cold. Chef Ramsay then kicked Rimmer and Almodovar from the kitchen. With nearly half the chefs being kicked out of the kitchen, the rest of the chefs from both teams continued and surprisingly finished the service. So these were the worst mistakes to have ever been made on Hell's Kitchen. If you ask me, the whole blunder with the dog food was the worst of them all. I mean, yeah, it's not good to waste food, serve raw steaks and all that. But serving dog food is a totally different thing. Maybe someday we'll have a Hell's Kitchen challenge dedicated to dogs. That's actually a pretty interesting idea. I mean, why not? While I draft my petition for this request, I'll say goodbye for now. Thanks for watching, guys!